Recently, a friend of mine decided he wanted to get an electric car. And I was very excited for him. I think that's a really cool thing. I like to talk to people about the electric car. It's kind of a fun conversation. And so I sat and talked with them for a little bit about the relative merits of driving an electric car. So it was really kind of cool. It was kind of a fun conversation we were having, and he learned a little bit about some things, and I learned a few new things along the way too. But that's not the point of the story. The story is that he really wanted to get a Tesla. So he contacted our local showroom. They're not dealerships, they're showrooms. And he wanted to see about the potential to buy a car. And the interesting thing was they told him that it was going to be about 5 months before he could take delivery of a car. As you may know, Tesla has a huge backlog, much like all the car manufacturers do, and can't get cars for the foreseeable future. So he's going to have to wait a while to get one. It was a little disappointing. So he went ahead and shopped around a little more to see if maybe there was one that was available that might be a resale or some sort of used car. But unfortunately, he wasn't having any luck for finding anything that he really wanted that way either. So he's like, well, maybe I'll look at other car companies. And here's where things get a little more interesting, because when you look around at all these car companies, they all talk about the cars they're going to be producing or have started in very limited production here in the United States. But there aren't many available here in South Florida. But then he finally found that the Hyundai ioniq 5, that's the car that's not quite a crossover, not quite a small SUV. It's a decent sized car, but it's not huge. And it actually fits the bill for what he was looking for. And so he went and looked at one at the local dealership. And he went over and he was talking to them a little bit about it. And they had 2 in stock or something like that. So he talked about it a little bit. He took one for a test drive. He was kind of excited about the car. And then he came back and talked to me about it a little more. And he's like, well, what do you think about the ioniq 5? And one of the things that I mentioned to him was the one really big selling point of the Tesla is the supercharging network. The fact that you can sit in your car and figure out where you can go and actually know where to charge along the way is a huge advantage that Tesla still has. For the ioniq 5, you have to go and use these public chargers, whether it's EVgo or one of these ChargePoint or SEMA Connect or one of these companies that has charging around different places. You have to use their apps to be able to go and charge your car. And it's not a seamless experience where you can just go and drive. No, you have to do a little planning and actually plan outside of the app in the car, outside of the car itself, where you have to actually do your planning and figure out where you're going to stop. And the car is not doing the calculation for you and saying, hey, go to this one to get to this destination. You've got to kind of do that yourself. Now, I'll talk about that in just a minute because there was a couple of things that I noticed in the car. But in general, that was one of the huge advantages that the Tesla has, is this supercharging network. Now, that's not to say there aren't plenty of charging available out there. When you drive around, you see charging a lot of different places. In fact, when you go into the PlugShare app, not that I'm promoting them, but the PlugShare app is pretty good because it shows you all of the local charging that's available, and you can do some interesting things there. And then, of course, a better route planner allows you to plan your trip in a very similar way to what Tesla does. It's just outside of the car. So it doesn't account for road conditions and other things in the car. So that's kind of a interesting little thing, and that's one nugget I wanted to share with him that's a huge difference and a huge advantage that Tesla has. So we talked about, since he hadn't taken a test drive of the Tesla, since he couldn't get one, he decided to just wait on doing a test drive. He didn't want to drive out to the showroom and actually do it. So I told him, hey, you're welcome to take a test drive in my car. I have no problem with that. We can go out for a test drive and you can check it out. And we kept planning it and, kind of canceling. It was one of those things where he wasn't sure, because I think he was thinking, if I test drive the Tesla, I'm going to want one. And that's all there is to it. And so he kind of got into that mode of, well, if I test drive it, I might not want to go, and buy some other car, but I want the car now, sort of that instant gratification moment, right? We never did the test drive. And there was a lot of, things that happened along the way. Then he went one day and he actually calls me and he goes, hey, I'm at the dealership. I'm buying the Hyundai and I want to come by and show it to you. And I was like, hey, that's cool. That's great. I'm glad you're getting something you like. And it turns out he loves it. And he brought it by and he was very excited to show it to me. And I did a quick test drive with it. He showed me all the features. We talked about all the things in the car, and it was really, really a cool car. I was actually kind of impressed with what Hyundai's done. But another thing that I noticed about Hyundai and most of the legacy car manufacturers is that when they create an electric car, they're using the frame from the original ICE car that they had and actually creating the electric car around it. So the style of it, some of the things that they do, just the way it's designed, is very Icecentric. Now, that's fine in terms of that push-off point where you now have a very familiar electric car, right? It looks very much like your ICE cars. But the problem with that is that you're not using your real estate inside the car efficiently. So you still had the space where the engine goes, and you still had the way the rear axle fits, and some of these things that would be important for components of an ICE car that aren't necessary for the electric cars. So it's kind of one of these weird things that they traded off in the design to make it look more like the ICE car, because they're using the standard frame and technology from the ICE car in the general design. Now, also interesting was the fact that when I got in the car, you have to actually push the start button, just like you do in a lot of cars today. You get in the car and you press the start. You have to push your foot on the brake and you press the start button. I thought that was kind of weird. I get in my Tesla and I just get in and it is on. I don't have to do anything else. I have to hit the brake before I can put it into drive, of course, because you have to have one safety feature in there. But there was no start. There's no start in the car. And I don't know why the Hyundai had to have the start. It's sort of that mental thing where you're still going from the ICE car to the electric car where you have to actually push the start button. It's just kind of one of those weird things that I was like, but why? And I know other car companies do that too. Now I keep seeing other cars on the horizon that are near. They're going to be made soon, whether it's GM doing their entire skate system, the way they redesigned their frame. Ford is going all electric. Cadillac is going all electric. And it seems like they're all thinking about how do we redesign the car frame itself so that we rethink our design. So just something to keep in mind as you think about this. And the other, by the way, was about the car itself when you got inside. Now, it was really nice. This Ioniq 5 was really pleasant inside. It was kind of one of these things where it's, not quite luxury, but it was really high end. It was very nice inside. It was leather, I think, but the leather was kind of that little bit thinner leather than you see other places sometimes. Not that there's anything wrong with it, of course, but it just was one of those things when you first get in, it kind of has that. I heard somebody say in a review that it felt kind of plasticky, and I get that because it just felt like it was all plastic. It was leather, but it just felt, there was something about it that felt kind of sterile in a way. One thing about this car, my Tesla, when I get in it, I feel like it's kind of warm and it's kind of got that nice feel to it. And this one, when you sat in the seats, they were comfortable, and they were the leather seats with the airframe in it, so that it kind of keeps the seat cool. It was really nice inside. It was very comfortable. It was comfortable in all 5 seats. There was plenty of space in the hatch to put some stuff in. So it was really pretty nice. I enjoyed the look of the car. I took it for a test drive, and the drive was really, really pleasant, not unlike the Tesla in that sense. All the knobs and controls are slightly different, of course, like they are in any car, even in nice cars. When you get from one car to another, they're all sort of different from each other. So it was a little different in terms of how you put it in gear and how you do a couple of things, but no problem there. It was well designed that way and well thought out. There's a display that's in where the instrument cluster would go, right behind the steering wheel. So there is a display there, and it's kind of an awkward display. You know how sometimes you get in a nice car and you can't see all of the dials and everything behind the steering wheel? It was kind of like that, and it's like, but you created an electric car and you're putting a display there. Why are you making it awkward to read? Now, that display apparently only shows some battery information. I didn't play around with that display a whole lot. It was kind of one of those things where I'm like, well, what was that telling me? There's nothing really there that's compelling to me, though it's interesting to see the battery health. I imagine there's more behind it. Then there's a display off to the right, kind of like Tesla has, right, where there's a display over there. But it's more like your standard ICE car's sort of display, that, the thing they put in the car that gives you some information about the car, your map and whatever. And it's more like that. It's not that big, and it's also not that well thought out. When you sit there and you look at it, you go, what is this display telling me? It feels like they just took the piece of information that you would have had in your ICE car and sort of modified it a little bit and then just stuck it in the electric car. So there's a couple of extra things in there where it tells you about battery life and it tells you about a couple of other things, but it doesn't really give you anything compelling. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, wait, I have to click here to get to that. Now, again, that's about the user interface, and there's some things in there that are certainly useful. Here's the thing. That's another advantage that Tesla has. Tesla, first and foremost, is a software company, and secondly, is a car manufacturer. This Hyundai, they're a car manufacturer first, and they think about the software second. So the software itself doesn't really do anything or have anything interesting that it has built into it, where it really feels like it's running the car. It feels like the car is running, and the software in the display here is almost an afterthought. Not that there's anything wrong with what the display has on it, not that it doesn't work or anything like that. It just feels like it's not as complete and integrated as part of the car. And it's just, found that really interesting. Now, back to charging. So the challenge with this car is that it goes 300 miles on a single charge. So it's got a, I guess, 80 kilowatt hour battery or so in it, which is great. But when you think about the nature of it, you go, okay, so where do I charge and how do I charge? And there, in the maps there, you can put in some charging destinations. You can put in some information that will help you find chargers, but it's not as seamless. It doesn't just come up with a bunch of chargers. Now, it uses the CCS adapter, so it's got the universal charging, and you can plug in pretty much anywhere. But you have to apply to these different programs and go through these different things. Now, I have a couple of accounts. I have like a Charge Point, I have a SEMA Connect, and I think I had one other one, but I may have let it go. And they were just the free accounts that don't allow you to necessarily do charging on the fly. Go to them and you actually just use your app to open up the charger to let it know it's you. And then you plug in and you do your charging. And then when you're done, it actually will bill you for it. And you can attach a credit card to it, so it's really pretty straightforward. It's not hard. You just have to do the extra step of opening the app to let it know it's you. Whereas with the Tesla, as soon as you come up to it and you open it, it knows it's you and you plug in and it bills you automatically. There's no extra step required with the app. It's trivial, and yet it's not, because now you're going to have to stop periodically at these different charging stations to go in and actually do the charging. So it's kind of one of those things where you think about, wow, is it worth the extra effort for now? 5 years from now, that may be very different anyway. I don't know. We're going to see how this works out. I keep hearing about more federal money being put into charging networks. I keep hearing about more charging networks popping up. I hear about these companies that are trying to partner with the charging networks to make sure that they're in the right places. And who knows, maybe it'll get better with apps that you can actually get engaged and actually find charging. And these level 2 chargers that are out there, whether it's ChargePoint or whoever, they all charge at a similar rate to what Tesla does, and they're continually upgrading their hardware as well. Tesla is doing it as a matter of course because they want to make sure that that's the niche they have in the marketplace, where these other companies are doing it because it's profitable in some way for them. So eventually they'll get there to the same charging rate that Tesla has, but for now, most of them are, still at that lower end of the level 2, where Tesla keeps bumping it up and makes it faster charging. So that's something else that's a little thing in there. Now let's talk about price. When my friend was looking at the Tesla, he was looking at the Tesla Model 3 long range. And that was in the neighborhood of about $48,000 US. And right now, there's no federal tax credit for the Teslas. They haven't gotten it back. There's still an ongoing discussion between the federal government and Elon Musk about whether they should get it again. They probably will, and it looks like it may happen again as early as March or April, but for now, there isn't one. And since there's no car inventory, I guess it doesn't matter. But you have to consider that cost. It's a higher cost. Remember that I only spent around $35,000 for my car, and I got the $7,000 tax credit. So for me, this car was a tremendous value. If I were in the market for an electric car today, I wouldn't be willing to spend, I don't have that kind of money, spend $48,000 for a car. When you look at the amount, you go, okay, so Tesla is like $48,000 for the car, and for that Model 3 long range. When he looked at the Ioniq 5, he was surprised to learn that it was about the same price. And it's like, wow, it's, $48,000 for the car. Now he got a few incentives and discounts, a little bit here and there. But at the end of the day, that's about what he spent on the car. Now, I look at it and I go, wow, for that amount of money, I just don't know. It's one of those things when you look at the price point, you go, until they get the price point down to a reasonable level where you can actually get it at a price that's similar to an ICE car or something that's affordable for more people, you're not going to really get in the marketplace just yet. It's going to take a little while before we get enough cars out there at a reasonable price point. Now, it's economies of scale. Remember when the Chevy Volt first came out, they were charging $120,000 for it. When the Tesla first came out, the first Teslas were $70,000 or $80,000 or something. And the pricing has been more competitive in more recent days. And yeah, you probably still could get a Tesla Model 3 standard range for in the neighborhood of what I paid. It's going to be more, of course, because that's just, you know, the nature of inflation. But they don't make them today. Just because they can sell so many of the higher up cars, a couple of levels up, they don't make it. So it's impossible to get right now. Now, when the manufacturing comes back to full speed and we've got more cars available, certainly I think they will have it available again because they'll want to get more cars into the marketplace. And I believe that at some point, Hyundai, when they get more push into the marketplace, you'll start to see that price point come down. And certainly I would consider one in the future. I definitely would, because it was a really nice car, very approachable, felt very nice, very pleasant. And if it were at the same price as other Hyundai cars, other Hyundai vehicles, I would certainly consider it. So I just thought it was interesting how that all came together, and he made a decision because he really wanted an electric car, that he got the one he wanted. And I thought that was really cool, and kudos to him for picking up the car he wanted. And thanks to him for letting me do the test drive and kind of go around in it a little bit. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to sit in and play with a little bit. It was pretty cool to see it. It was like going to the dealership and taking a test drive without having to go to the dealership and taking a test drive. So that was it. I just wanted to share that experience with you. I thought that was neat, and I thought it was interesting, and I just had some thoughts about this car that I thought was pretty cool.